Okay, it's 12:30, and we're going to get started on our next presentation, call recording and your regulatory obligations. Just before I do that or get into the substantive content of that, let me quickly introduce you to Rimble. So Rimble provides a hosted telecom platform that provides communication services to companies across Canada. We're proud to have helped our clients keep in touch with their clients throughout 2020. We've got a platform that works with all of the latest desktop phones. We have a fully integrated mobile application where you can make phone calls, connect to conference platform that we also provide, and as well we have a FaxHound eFax solution that you can use to send and receive faxes. Before I get going, let me just do the obligatory disclaimer that none of this is legal advice. This is legal information, and if you need advice that pertains to your particular situation, you should certainly seek your own counsel. So just lay out here the applicable laws that you have to kind of be aware of when you're thinking about call recording. So first, there's the criminal code, and so you're not allowed to record as a third party any conversation. One party in the conversation has to be aware of the recording and be consenting to the recording. In the United States, each state has its own criminal laws. Most states are similar to Canada with one party. But a handful do require both parties to know about the recording. However, despite the criminal code in Canada requiring only one party, in a commercial context, the governing and more onerous legislation is the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act, or PIPEDA. And that is largely a two-party system. And so if you want to comply in an administrative context, as far as PIPEDA is concerned, we give you here a few steps that you can use to comply with PIPEDA's more onerous provisions than just the criminal code. So what is PIPEDA? It's an act that governs how private sectors collect, use, and disclose personal information in the course of commercial business. PIPEDA covers more than just call recording. But for the call recording portion of it, as I mentioned, it is more onerous than the criminal code. However, I think if you read the act and read, there's I think it's like 8 principles or 10 principles, I forget how many principles, but if you read those principles and you read the act, you'll see that really just a bit of common sense and common courtesy will get you compliant, and those are really just good business practices. So what I'm going to do is give you here 6 steps that you can use to be compliant as far as call recording goes. Okay, so first, the first one is knowledge and consent. So you've got to let your employees know they're being recorded. You've got to let your customers know they're being recorded. So for incoming calls, what I would do is I'd play a quick auto attendant message such as, please hold while we connect your call. And then you can say, this call may be recorded for, and you have to state your reason. And I'm going to get into that, but so maybe it's for training and quality purposes, maybe it's for something else. So for outgoing calls, however, you don't have the luxury of having an auto attendant to be able to answer, and so you're going to have to train your employees if you are recording, to personally let the other party know. Consent is required, but it can be implied by the caller choosing to continue after being informed of the recording. So the caller doesn't necessarily have to say, yes, I agree to the recording. But it does have to be clearly made out to the caller that it is, the call is being recorded. So, employees don't get to hear the automated messages on incoming calls, and employers often forget to notify them. And so what I would suggest is you include that notice in their training and try to remind them often. And this can be done by training your employees to be more compliant with PIPEDA. You just throw those mentions in there. Okay, we go on to the next slide here. So 2 is state the predominant reason for the recording. You've got to be honest about the predominant reason for recording the call. Don't say the call or the recording is for training and quality assurance when it's really to record the terms of a contract. You can still word it in a less intrusive and customer-centric way. For instance, this call may be recorded to ensure the accuracy of your order. Stating the predominant purpose is important because it sets the caller's expectation about what type of information is being retained and for how long it might be kept. 3, you've got to minimize the amount of private information that you keep in your recording. So recording should be no different than any of your other electronic records. Train your staff to pause recording while customer shares sensitive financial or identifying information that doesn't fall into the predominant purpose of the recording. So if you take a credit card over the phone, generally bad practice to keep credit card numbers on file, and you certainly don't want them being kept in your call recording. So you got to be able to pause your recording, and similarly, other types of personal information that you don't necessarily need to keep. All right, 4. Target your recordings. So you got to be discriminating what you record. Don't record every call in and out of your office carte blanche, although that's tempting to do. Your recording activity has got to be more targeted. So you got to record calls to the key phones or phone queues necessary to fulfill that predominant purpose for the recording. So if it's for training and quality assurance purposes, then maybe you're recording your support queue. If it's for recording the terms of the contract, maybe you really only need to be recording calls to your sales queue. You don't need to record calls to the accounting department or the support team. Okay, 5. You've got to minimize the amount of time you keep your recording. So the length of the time you keep that recording should be commensurate with the stated purpose of the recording. So for instance, if you told your customer you're recording for training purposes, but then you held the recording for 7 years, you're probably offside. But if you let your customer know that you're recording the call to ensure that you accurately recorded their instructions, well, that would be justifiable to hold it for longer periods of time, and certainly the length of whatever the contract is that you're working on. Okay, 6, you've got to make sure, you've got to make sure that your recordings are stored securely. Are files encrypted? Are they accessible if needed? Is there a risk of loss? Your customers have the right to ask for the recording, just as they have the right to ask for other personal information you may store. You want to know that you can get the recording when needed. Encryption is really important because you need to minimize your exposure in the case of a data breach. So those are my 6 steps. PIPEDA is really a principle-based legislation, and the principles are based on reasonable expectations, common sense, and common courtesy. Being compliant means being polite to your customers and your employees, which is good for your business. And your phone system is really your partner in being compliant. And so the Rainbow phone system allows you to set recording options on separate phones and queues and to customize the retention period for each. Recordings are stored on our secure servers, and each recording is encrypted for double security. The system allows you to automate your recording notifications to reduce potential friction between your callers and your employees. So that's the end of my prepared remarks. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just see if there are any questions.